we talked about Nick Sirianni real quick, and we talked about how he improved during the season. However, there were a lot of head coaches this season who they got their pink slips at the end of the year. More
Yep.
head coaches than I've seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Zimmer, longtime head coach of the Minnesota Vikings for more than half a decade.
Yeah.
Mike Nagy, former head coach of the year. You had Joe Judge, who he was anointed by Giants fans before he had ever done anything, and of course the comments that he made at the end of 2020 after the Eagles tanked that one game.
Yeah. And the Giants said they were going to keep him, and then like 3 days later they get rid of him anyway. So that was a weird thing if I'm them.
And he said, I would never try to tank a game. And he played some sort of wing tee, like double full house backfield on a 3rd and 9 against the Washington football team,
From
obviously tanking the game. And obviously they must have fired him from embarrassment. Brian Flores, Miami Dolphins head coach, who had made some positive strides, he got fired. David Culley, who was there for 1 year, he got fired with the Texans.
My question, the John Gruden thing too.
What?
Yeah,
the John Gruden thing got fired. We don't know if Oakland or Las Vegas is going to keep their coach.
Yep.
I guess my question to you is, number one, out of all of those head coaches, who deserved the most to get fired? And number two, what is the most attractive place for a head coach to go? And who do you think is who do you think teams are keying on the most? Who is the hottest assistant coach or new guy to be coming in? Oh, and Jacksonville, of course. Urban Meyer, who can forget?
How could I forget that one? Yeah. I mean, Jacksonville's a little attractive for Trevor Lawrence and really no other reason right now. But the head scratching one is Flores to a lot of people. And, someone who lives in Florida, I hear a little more chatter than maybe an NFL fan from somewhere else. Like, I don't know if you curse on your show, so I'm not gonna, but like, apparently he was just a dick. Like, he was a good coach, but like nobody liked him. And I guess at some point, like, I think it was Dick Vermeil that said back in the day, like, when you coach football, you're in the people business. It's about the relationships and stuff. So that's like the main reason that he's gone. And I think he's a good coach. So if you put him somewhere else, the Texans one is just weird. Like, even when they hired him, it was a 2-year contract when the league standard is 4 years. So that alone is like, all right, they don't have much in store for this guy. I don't know if you can throw Vegas in there if they are, in fact, looking for a coach. I think they're the most attractive option. They have the most, a team that made the playoffs, even with all the crazy stuff that happened with them. And we said his name a little bit earlier, but like Doug Peterson, I think, would be perfect in Vegas if he is, in fact, coming back to coaching. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Along with Brian Flores, I think Brian Flores kind of got them off to a wrong footing. Mm-hmm. Because they drafted Tua when they could have drafted Herbert. And I'm not here to say that Herbert is a way, way better quarterback, but obviously the jury feels like it's more in on him. Like, they see him as being better. But the fact of the matter was, they had Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I said this last season, they had Ryan Fitzpatrick playing with the team well and having a lot of rapport with the team. And then halfway through the season, or a little bit earlier than halfway through the season, they have a winning record and they're like, okay, we're going to bench you and we're going to put Tua in.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was like, wait, but they're doing well with Fitzpatrick. I understand that you want to have the rookie play, but we saw what the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes, even with Alex Smith doing well. Why don't you just do something like that? And It would be great to put Tua in when Fitzpatrick is struggling, but Fitzpatrick didn't struggle all season. And then Tua came in, he won a few games, but then he started losing a few games. And there was a game where against, I think it was the Raiders, where they were losing by like 10 points. And then they put Fitzpatrick in, and Fitzpatrick won the game for them.
Yeah.
Eventually they missed the playoffs. And I was just like, to pull your rookie quarterback out like that, that's just got to be like a confidence killer. Like, that's got to be a flat line right there. Like you just don't do that. Like I could see if Fitzpatrick was like struggling a little bit, but he wasn't really struggling at all.
And
He was
then,
playing really well.
Their last game of the year last year, if they win, they're in the playoffs. And I don't even remember if they started Fitzpatrick, they got smoked by the Bills. So it's like, what was all this even leading up to at that point?
Yeah, it's in my mind, it's always like, is your goal to make the playoffs, or is your goal to like have like a let's wait and see year? And I can understand that, they started winning, so you're like, okay, now we're going to be playoff ready, and then
go
they
for
weren't.
it.
And then this season, they win their first game, and they have like a 7-game losing streak, not just because of Tua, because Tua got injured. They had to play a few backups, and then they lose that game against Jacksonville, which everyone was surprised about. And then they go on that huge winning streak, and then he loses like the last 2 games of the season, eliminating them from the playoffs. I think that is like a key example for how the head coach and the management of the team need to have a clear understanding about what the direction of the team is going to be. Because there are a lot of examples where the head coach and the GM, they don't agree about what's going on, and it ends up going completely south.
Right.
The case in point, the RG3 Washington Redskins, where Snyder wants RG3, but Shanahan wants Kirk Cousins. So it's just a mess. I feel like that firing was just more of like a parting ways. It was like better for both sides, really. Because now Flores can find where he's going to go, and the Miami Dolphins can find somebody who wants to take on Tua,
Yeah. And I think out of all the names mentioned, Flores will be the first with a new job. Let's say maybe Chicago, or just, I don't know where, but like, I think out of the guys released, as far as head coaches go, some of them might retreat back to, being a coordinator, because that's happened sometimes. And this is a narrative that's coming out too, and I'm a fan of it. There are guys that are just good coordinators, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you could be one of the best defensive coordinators and win championships in that role. It doesn't mean like some guys, when they hit that role and they're that guy on defense or offense, like they feel they have to be a head coach, even if that's not their thing. And I think we see more of that now. And I think we're eventually getting the narrative that like you can just be great at what you do. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
There are also some great like coordinators that no one's ever heard of that just come out of nowhere once they become head coaches, like Matt LaFleur. I feel like nobody really heard about that guy until the Titans or the Packers signed him, and they were like, who?
Yeah.
Who is that?
And like Mike Vrabel, nobody thought was probably going to be a good head coach. Like, yeah, he's been around the league a long time, great player, Belichick guy. Like, but I don't think anyone thought he was going to build a not often looked at as a powerhouse team like Tennessee. Like, they lost today, but like, their number 1 seed, like that means something.
Yeah, it means something, but it doesn't mean anything if you're the Tennessee Titans. You haven't won a home playoff game since I was in middle school.
Yeah. So, shout out to the Bengals though. First road playoff win ever. So
shout out to the Bengals. Shout out to them for, first of all, winning their first playoff game since I was like 1 year old, and secondly, going to a AFC title game for the first time in my lifetime. I'm 32 years old. So yeah, I also, to piggyback off of the Brian Flores thing, before we get to the last thing we're going to talk about, the whole Deshaun Watson thing was also kind of like a wild card there, because I remember the Dolphins they flew him in, and I know that Brian Flores wanted him, and it was just, I feel like the whole time, like I couldn't imagine being Tua in that situation. Like, does my head coach like me? I feel like someone should write a book about that. Does my head coach like me?
Yeah.
And all of that. So you think Brian Flores is the best candidate, and the Raiders are the best place to go? And what was the other thing I said?
I'm trying to remember now, because I did feel like I left one of them out when we were talking about other things.
What is the best destination? Who is the best the coordinator, was the worst? Who was the worst? Like, who was the most deserving to get fired?
So like, I still look at the Texans at that, but like that was a bad team with a bad, like nobody was going to succeed there. You could have, put Bill Belichick there. They weren't going to succeed this year with the roster that was thrown out there. So like, Zimmer, I think not that, and I like Zimmer. I think he's a decent coach, but like he had like his just word wasn't traveling anymore. I think he like outstayed his welcome. I think it was like, all right, if you can't get anything going this year, like it's probably time. So like, I don't mean like this guy deserves to not have a job. That's a little extreme, but like maybe his job in Minnesota, it was warranted he doesn't have it anymore.
To quote you, a lot of Vikings players also said he was a bit of a dick.
Okay.
At one game, he made after like a loss to one of the teams this year, he made a speech about how bad things had happened with Minnesota that weren't his fault, like Adrian Peterson tearing something and then getting suspended for beating his kid, and then Teddy Bridgewater hurting himself in the preseason or like a practice, or hit his eye or something like that. And I just think that I think he was just mad that his team had like the worst COVID vaccine percentage, and he was, I know that was something he was mad about. Like he was upset that like a lot of his players didn't get vaccinated, and whatever you think about that, it doesn't really matter, but like he was upset about it because he's like 60, he's in his 60s, and he just I think that I agree. I think it's time. I mean, for that, I mean, my father-in-law is a Vikings fan, and he constantly complained about how the Vikings, all their games were like, all their wins were literally close wins.
Yeah.
Like all of them were nail biters.
See, he should have spent all that time making halftime speeches about like watering flowers and stuff, because that seems to work out.
Right.